Hello, welcome to another day of working in the van. Today we're going to be working on the sink. So we have a lot of different pieces here. We have our water jugs, we have our water tubing, and then we have our faucet, which I need to go drill a hole for. We have our pump for pumping the water, and then we have a bunch of attachments on the bottom of the sink in order to feed down into a hole that actually fits into the tubing. I'm going to start by... Not sure how I'm going to start. Let's just see what happens. The first thing I'm going to do is take Teflon tape left over from building the solar shower and wrap it around each of the places that a piece is going to join into another. Then I'm going to be getting the PVC cement and cementing this piece into this piece. The rest of them just screw in, so it'll just be Teflon tape, PVC cement. And then this section will be ready to receive a hose. This will be draining the water out of the sink into a gray water bin. And then there'll be another hose coming out of the fresh water through the faucet, which I need to go drill a hole for back there. And that will be connected simply using an adapter with a barb and then metal tightening rings to try to create a seal. We're gonna see what happens. I don't know if this is gonna work, but we're gonna try. So with Teflon tape, you just take the strand, you get it started around the threads, and you want to run it clockwise so that when you're screwing it in, you're screwing with the Teflon tape rather than against it. And with the solar shower, I was pretty sparing with the Teflon tape. And I noticed some leaks that I then had to go back and seal. So in this instance, I'm not being sparing at all. I'm just putting 2 layers or so minimum around each of the threads from top to bottom so that the threads are fully covered, and then inserting. So we have a bunch of extra tubing. I ordered 25 feet, I think. I'll put the link down below. Yeah, 25 feet, ½ inch. So I'm going to take a little bit, and it's pretty tight in there, a little tighter than I anticipated. So I'm going to take a little bit and see if just attaching it and running it into one of these buckets is enough, or if I need to devise some sort of creative system. I wanted to have a kink in the hose, so you have your hose run down, up, and then back down, and that creates a little reservoir of water stuck in there, which keeps odors from coming out of your gray water tank. It doesn't look like I'm going to have enough room for that, which is fine. Slightly inconvenient. If I start having odors, I'll figure it out. I spent about an hour in the aisle of Home Depot, the PVC aisle, trying to get fittings that would work with my sink and then with the hose and with everything. Looking at it now, there's about 3 or 4 inches of wasted space due to those pieces. If I could have found, and I swear I tried to find a simpler way to do this connection, but if I could have done it in 1 or 2 pieces and saved the extra couple of inches, I would have been much more happy, because as it is, this is going to be really close, or possibly just rub or be pinched or something, but we'll see if it works. Okay, so first issue that we've encountered, that I'm an idiot. These are ½ inch barbs according to Baby Whale, but as I'm finding out, nothing makes sense in the world, ever.
Jesus Christ!
So I have a ½ inch hose, which is just the same diameter as this, which means the hose doesn't fit over these, and I already bought adapters, and I already attached the adapters for a ½ inch hose, so... trip to the hardware store and hope that there's something that can go between this and a...
What the hell is that?
½ inch hose that I can still seal somehow. Nothing ever goes according to plan. Alright, so here we are for try 2. I have tried to reduce the size of my little process here. I've got a female barb that will fit, hopefully. I also got some more tubing, some different tubing, because the other stuff I had was extremely rigid, was not flexible at all, and also it was 3/8 inch internal diameter rather than 1/2 inch, and the baby pump here, the whale foot pump, is 1/2 inch diameter internal diameter for these. So let's see if this works.
I don't watch the news.
It would not be a van build episode with Jeremiah if there weren't a lot of mistakes. So let's try to recap what we're doing here. So we started out with that blue tubing, which is, I guess, just standard tubing, but it's incredibly rigid. As you can see, it doesn't really bend at all, and when it does, it only bends at very, very long angles as opposed to sharp angles, which is what I need in here. Then I went to the hardware store, found some more flexible, still pretty rigid, but reasonably flexible tubing in order to be able to make those odd angles that I am showing you right now. And what I figured out was I had the wrong size internal diameter for my pump. So this is going to be my foot pump for pumping water out of my freshwater container through the sink faucet, which is this, and then into the sink bowl. So I had this blue 1/2 inch external diameter tubing, which first of all wasn't rigid, wasn't flexible enough, so it didn't work. But then also, given the internal diameter was only 3/8 inch, I think, it wouldn't actually fit around the whale pump. So this new tubing is 1/2 inch internal diameter, so it fits perfectly around the prongs here, the barbs. And then also I'm going to try to reuse the barbs and fittings that I had fitted for the 3/8 inch internal diameter. I know it's not perfect and there's a little bit of wiggle room, but I've tightened the metal ring. I've tightened these metal rings right here really, really tightly around the barb and the hose, and hopefully that will be enough to make it a good seal, even though it's the wrong size barb and tubing. So let's see what happens. Okay, so now what we are doing is deciding where we want to put the faucet. So this is the top of the faucet, this is the bottom. This part right here will sit on top of the counter, and this part will go underneath it and then tighten down. So in order to fit it into my counter space, I got a hole saw. I got a hole saw drill bit that is about the same size, or almost the exact same size, as the base fitting here that's going to go through the counter. So that's here. We're going to drill a hole where we want it in the counter, and then we're going to attach all of this. First, I just want to make sure I'm happy with where it would be. Do I want it right in the back? Do I want it off to the side? Do I want it at an angle right here? My first instinct was at an angle, but now I'm wondering if I want it straight on in order to cover all of the sink. If I have it here, then I open up this space. If I have it here, then I open up this space. This is kind of hard. Okay, so I think I'm going to go to the right of the sink here. I forgot that the reason why I was thinking to go to the right in the first place was because my foot pump will be on the right of the sink, and therefore I want my tubing to be able to run straight from the foot pump up the side of the wall and straight to the base of the faucet without a lot of interference and running different directions. So let's see how that goes. All right, so we just did something absolutely terrifying. We drilled a hole in our beautiful, beautiful countertop that took many weeks to make. So let's see if it works. Okay, so that looks pretty good. Now we're going to take the bottom pieces and we're going to attach them and see how it looks. And then probably I'll seal the whole thing with a bead of silicone, just like I'm gonna seal the rim of the sink with a bead of silicone as well. Probably more than a bead, to try to hold it in place, because it's meant to be an undermount sink, but I overmounted it, which means it's actually just sitting in the opening and bumps kind of move the sink. So we'll see if a couple of beads of silicone underneath the edge fix that. Okay, we got the initial extension of hose from the base of the sink to where the baby whale foot pump will go. Definitely a very tight space, so very tedious, not very fun at all. Probably an order of things I could have done better, like put the Teflon tape on before inserting the sink through the base mount hole, because putting it on was a nightmare back there. But here's what it looks like so far. Now we're going to try hooking up the baby whale pump and then run a fresh line water from the baby whale pump into a jug of water, fill them all up, and then test them. Okay, so we filled up one of our jugs halfway full of water. That'll be our freshwater jug. Then we have our sink connected to the out of the baby pump, the output, and then we have a hose from the input running to the freshwater tank. And then we have our sink bottom draining into the gray water tank, and we're gonna pump away and see what happens. I have no idea if this is gonna work. Kind of nervous, kind of excited. You just get to sit there and enjoy cool music and fun transitions and funny clips from The Office.
Yes, it is true. I, Michael Scott, am signing up with an online dating service. I need a username. Little Kid Lover. That way people will know exactly where my priorities are at.
And this. Okay, so in case you can't tell, it is soaking wet now inside the van. Clearly, using the smaller barb and the bigger hose was not a good idea.
No shit, Sherlock.
Now I'm gonna have to fix that. Here we go.
A few moments later.
Oh boy, okay, so I'm ending up using more Teflon tape, leftover Beauty All tape, and just really trying to seal up that extra bit of space. I even cut little pieces of this off and put them around the nub, the barb, just to create extra surface area. And now I am dealing with the last place that water is coming out, which is actually not, so you can see my really hacky job here. The water's not coming out of the connection between the hose and the barb anymore. It's coming out of the connection between this and the bottom of the sink. So I'm going to put some more Teflon tape on there, screw it on, wrap Beauty All tape around it, and then take a metal O-ring thing and run that up and then tighten that down. And if that doesn't create a watertight seal, then I'm gonna have to start from scratch. But officially all wet and lying under the sink on my back, I have a lot more respect for plumbers now. Okay, I'm hesitant to speak too soon, but after much jerry-rigging and hacking and really not great plumbing, unless this is what actual plumbers do, I am currently pumping water and we have no leaks as of yet. I'm going to pump for a couple minutes and see if I can get it to leak, and then I might run some more Beauty All tape around each seal and then tape it tightly. I don't know. At this point, it might just be a matter of time before all this comes undone, or who knows, maybe it'll stay. Only the test of time. But fast forward to the day that I'm sitting in a Home Depot parking lot in the middle of somewhere in the country trying to fix this. Hello. Okay, we are going to try to seal the sink. It is an undermount sink, but it has a lip, so I'm confident this is going to work. I don't really need the sink to hold still too much, but it would be kind of annoying if it moved every single time I bumped it or moved the tube in the bottom or something. But also, if I do spill something, I'd rather that it be contained on top of the counter rather than seeping in cracks. So I'm going to try running silicone, all-purpose silicone clear underneath the edge of the sink, enough that it kind of splays out and comes out over the edges, and then possibly actually run a little around the edge as well. I'm not really sure how this is going to turn out. I might need to tape the metal as well. Right now I just have the outside taped, and I don't even know if that's going to work for trying to contain the silicone, but here we go. It's closer than my hands have been. Oh, I'm jealous of the rain. There's nothing to forgive.
And always thought you'd come back to me. All you found was heartbreak and misery.
Are we through?
But I hope. Hello, we're going to try to finish the plumbing system today. Finally got the last water jugs that I needed to try to finish the system. So I'm filling them up right now, and then we're going to see if we can position them, bungee cord them down so that they don't move around and break open my door while I'm driving. And then I need to figure out a creative way to make sure they don't splash out of the jugs while I'm driving. So a combination of not filling it up enough, and then also possibly one thing I'm trying is stretching rubber over the cap and poking a hole in it, but I'm not sure if that will actually stay. Another issue that I'm having is the spool from which I got my piping. It had the piping sitting for so long that the piping has a permanent bend to it, and the bend pulls the tube upwards. No matter where you put it, it's going to try to pull itself into a circle, and so unless I put a lot of extra in there, it's going to pull itself upwards, and then that makes it so that it's hard to get the tube to actually take water in. So a tube goes in here, and traditionally you'd want it to just sit at the very bottom and collect water from the very bottom. But the way my tubing is working is I stick it in and it loops back up because it's trying to turn, and then it sits about right here, which is utterly useless. So I need to find some way to make sure the tubing stays all the way down. Either the position in which I stick it in, or getting some sort of object, maybe a copper piece of tube or something that forces the pipe to be straight, the tube to be straight, and then stick that whole thing in there. We are finally just about to finish the plumbing system. It's the most crude system you're going to see out there, but it doesn't involve an electricity consuming pump, which are also really loud, and when you use them, the whole van reverberates with this awful sound. That was a pretty accurate imitation, if I do say so myself. If I say so myself. Okay, so we have 4 6-gallon jugs. One of them is for gray water. So one of them gets drained into from the sink, and the other 3 are my fresh water. One of them has the cap off, and there is a tube sticking in it. And the big question will be, one, if everything works and if everything stays watertight, which that's always a big question when you're doing this yourself. But the second question is, if these caps are small enough to keep splashes from coming out. So I only filled them probably up to about 5.5 gallons full to keep the water level low. But then with all the splashing and all the jostling that's going to be going on as I drive, are they going to stay relatively water sealed? This is what they look like on the inside. So this is an option to have a spout, but if you turn it inverted, that opening right there is pretty small. And then the piping that is inside of it, the tubing, is almost as big as that. So there's very little room for water to splash upward, but water will find a way. And so we are going to see, I'm going to leave some napkins in there. And if they are soaked after a day or two of driving, then I have a problem. If they're not, then maybe we can make this work. The next step will be to just drill down the baby pump, baby whale pump thing so that it's actually stuck to the floor. And I just found a leak. Fucking A. Okay, so the leak is coming from the actual fitting on the baby whale pump, which should be able to be fixed. The one that's not leaking is slightly more stuck onto the baby whale pump, so I'm thinking that's the problem here. So I'm gonna unscrew it, try to stick it on even more, and then we'll test it again. Okay, I think I fixed it. I loosened the metal clamp ring, slid it a little bit further along the tubing, and then retightened it so that it's actually squeezing on the center of the tube, and therefore there's excess on the outside and excess on the inside, of course. The way it was before was it was right on the end, and I think it wasn't giving its full clamping abilities to the piece of tubing. So I just pumped it with my hand for a minute or two, and I see 0 leaks. I see 0 leaks coming out of the baby pump. I see 0 leaks coming out of the drainage, and I see 0 leaks coming out of the tubing that feeds into the gooseneck faucet. I'm terrified of this leaking more because I'm pretty traumatized from the past couple of weeks of trying to get this to work without spilling, without leaking. Most of it was my fault just because I was using the wrong size tubing, etc. But I'm so scared that I'm gonna come back here one day and this is all gonna be just soaking wet. And and then it will have slid down the back of the van towards anything. Let's think positive thoughts. Jeez. Okay. I'm gonna screw down the baby whale pump. I'm gonna bungee cord everything down, and then if this is done, then this is done, and hopefully this system works. If not, let's not even think about it. If not, let's just do this. Everything looks good. The baby well pump is screwed down, just sitting outside my cupboards so that I can access it. I'm doing it without my shoe on because I figure most of the time I'll probably be pumping without my shoe on. Everything's working all right so far. Time will tell whether these joints that I fitted and all of the connection points actually stay tight enough to seal for water. The way that I'll know when I need to change my gray water is just whenever I run out of fresh water from whatever one I'm pumping from, I'll know that the gray water is pretty full. And then I'll just undo the whole thing and take them out, dump the gray water, and refill the fresh water. And then just rotate the jugs. And then I guess maybe just fill up whenever I get down to just one left or something. I'm not sure how fast I'm gonna be using water. I've never actually measured the amount of water I consume, whether through cooking and eating and drinking, etc., brushing my teeth. I've never measured that. So after a couple months, maybe I'll update the description with how much water I tend to use while living out of this van. Anyway, that's a big project done. That's another big, huge thing done, and I'm ready to move on to the next thing.